Doing good. I know it's like crunch time because Ramadan is literally in less than 48 hours. So I know it's a busy time. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining me today. And I know right now or this month is not just Ramadan, but it's also National, I think, Heart Health Month. So today's session, I'm going to be talking about a heart healthy lifestyle, and I'll also try to integrate some information about Ramadan, some things that we can do for prep. I actually have a more in-depth session that I did for another organization. So if anyone's interested in kind of more in detail recording, I can share that with you. So I will give my email at the end, and you can just email me for the recording, and I can send that to you because that goes in more detail than we have time today. But anyways, Bismillah, we'll get started. And here we go. So today we have a lot to talk about. We'll talk about the importance of heart health first and foremost. And then lifestyle changes. So, how do we take this information that, let's be honest, a lot of us kind of know roughly. I always say this, we always kind of know roughly what to do, but doing it is the hard part.
Mhm.
So, working on those habit changes, kind of working on, okay, why is this important to me? Really looking at our motivation, our why. And that helps us to make effective changes. So, again, some of the stuff you might be like, yeah, yeah, we already know this, but are we doing it? So that's the thing to think about. So we'll talk about nutrition changes, physical activity, and I always love the session with Ms. Neelam. It's always really nice, and I enjoyed her shirt today. So, um,
Yeah.
anyways, she always has good. It's very good exercise, and I'm glad that you guys are able to do that every week. We'll talk about stress management briefly. That is a huge subject in and of itself, but it does play a really huge role all about health. When we are stressed out, it really wreaks havoc on the body, unfortunately. So that's a big factor. And then sleep. And I know in Ramadan, our sleep is disrupted. So I know for this month, we'll kind of, change things up there. But generally speaking, how is our sleep? Are we getting enough? What's the quality of our sleep? Because that also actually affects our entire health and well-being. And then we'll get into some practical tips, like how can we take this information? How can we implement it? And again, I'll draw in what I can, time permitting, about Ramadan. So why is heart health important in the first place? So our heart has been pumping blood from when we were an embryo. It's one of the first organs, actually. Actually, it's the first organ to form. And it's been pumping blood and oxygen throughout our entire body, and it removes waste products. So it's kind of doing a lot, and it is a vital organ. We cannot live without our heart. And what's amazing about our heart, everyone, is that it pumps about 1.5 gallons of blood every minute. So that's like 2,000 gallons going through our body every day. And our blood is traveling about 12,000 miles through our body each day. So that's four times the size of the US from coast to coast. If we go east to
Mhm,
west,
mhm.
right? It's amazing, right? So our heart is just like there's no words. So when we really think, about our whole body, and everything that it's doing without us even thinking about it, right? We're not thinking about, oh, okay, heart, time for you to beat, right? Let's, have you, pump blood. Kidneys, you need to filter the blood. Let's digest. We're not thinking about any of this, right? So it's really amazing how everything is working like clockwork, mashallah. So, since today we're focusing on heart health, one of the things that I wanted to talk about is this concept of atherosclerosis. So, atherosclerosis, I think we've all heard about this. This is this fatty build up that happens in our arteries. So, our arteries are the blood vessels that take that freshly oxygenated blood from our heart to the different parts of our body. So those vessels are taking all the blood to the different parts of the body so the body can use it for what it needs. And the veins are what bring the blood back to get oxygenated and so forth. So our arteries, right? They when we're born, they're nice and clean, nice and spick and span and clean. But through time, right? based on our lifestyle, based on our genetics as well. What could start to happen is we can start to see some fatty deposits, like a plaque. And it is kind of very similar to the plaque even in our teeth. And it's very interesting the correlation between dental health and overall health and well-being. So it's very interesting. But we'll focus today, of course, on the heart. So this plaque starts to build up. And then the more and more plaque that builds up, as you guys can see in this diagram here, right? That there it starts to really clog up the artery, so it makes it very difficult for blood to flow through. And then what could happen is a portion of that plaque itself could get unstable, right? And it can kind of create this chain reaction where a blood clot is created there, or a blood clot can form and travel, and that can cut off that blood supply. And if this is happening in our heart, this is termed a heart attack. And if this is happening in our brain, that's termed a stroke. So what happens is, and we're going to get into this, like how does this plaque formation start? What can I do about it? And what's really interesting and scary is that we're seeing this plaque formation start at earlier and earlier ages, right? So this is something that, this isn't something that happens when we're old, right? This is something that we are seeing happening earlier and earlier. So there are different tests that we can see to kind of, give us an idea of how our heart health is. This is by no means comprehensive, but these are some of the general tests that are done. So one of them, one of the main ones is called the lipid panel. So this tests our cholesterol and fats in our blood, right? So let me just kind of go back actually. So this right here, so this plaque buildup, what ends up happening is, as we'll talk about it momentarily, we have a certain type of lipoprotein called LDL, low density lipoprotein. So this is like the bad cholesterol, right? Think of it like the loser, the low life cholesterol. So what happens is when we make too much of it, and our liver is actually making cholesterol. So our livers are already doing that anyway. But when we make too much, and if it gets unstable, what happens is it can deposit itself on the walls of the arteries. And it's not supposed to be there. That damaged LDL is not supposed to be there. So the body launches this immune reaction like, what is that? Let's go over there. And they try to cordon it off. They try to destroy it. They try to remove it, but they kind of create this little fatty covering over it. And over time, as this starts to build more and more and more, this is contributing to that plaque buildup. So when we see in our blood tests LDL, so LDL, we ideally want to see this less than 100. And for those that have diabetes, you have heart issues, right? Depending on your medical condition, for some people, your doctor may even want it less than 70, right? Total cholesterol, this is all the different types of cholesterol. There's that LDL cholesterol, there's the HDL cholesterol, there's something called VLDL cholesterol. So the total cholesterol that we have, we want to see this less than 200. Now, HDL has a protective effect in the body. We're still trying to figure out what exactly it does, but it does have a protective effect. So HDL stands for high density lipoprotein. So this is the heart healthy, the happy one, the one that we want it to be higher. And so HDL, we want it more than 40 for men and more than 50 for women. And what's really interesting about HDL is one of the ways that we can help boost our HDL is by doing exercise. So that's a nice motivation there. So LDL and HDL, they basically are taking a look at the different types of lipoprotein, the little molecules there that can deposit themselves on the walls of the arteries, or the type of molecules that can remove that plaque buildup. That's what the HDL is. Then there's something called triglycerides. So triglycerides is the actual fat in our blood. So if we have a lot of fat in our blood, it's actually in the blood, it can make it very sticky, right? And then what happens is that it affects the blood flow, right? It kind of gets like really sloshy, I guess you can say. So imagine if a person has plaque buildup, right, and they have high triglycerides, a lot of fat in their blood. It's really not an ideal situation for our heart. So triglycerides, we want to see this less than 150. So I know some of you might have your labs, you can take a look at it. What's also really good to see is kind of the trend. So what is my usual trend? What is usually my total cholesterol? What's usually my HDL? What's usually my triglycerides? Sometimes when it starts to go up, it might be within normal limits and your doctor may not mention anything, but it's good to kind of see, oh wow, it's rising. What's going on? I don't want it to rise too much and then get into, the abnormal limits. So it's good to kind of keep and look at the trends as well. Whenever you get a blood test. And hopefully everyone is, inshallah, getting a blood test at least yearly when you have your annual physical, because they do the lipid panel as just part of protocol. So triglycerides, what's really interesting about triglycerides, everyone, is that it is affected by how much sugar you eat. So when we eat a lot of sugar, added sugars, I'm not talking about fruit. So fruit, we don't want to put in that category. But when we eat lots of sugar, a lot of sugary products, lots of processed sugar, a lot of white type of processed flours and so forth, what starts to happen is our body uses what it can for energy. It stores any remainder in the liver and in the muscle cells, but whatever's left over, it makes into triglyceride. So if your triglycerides are high, it's actually a good idea to take a look at how much sugar you're consuming. It is also affected by fat. We'll talk about that, but take a look at that. And also stress and smoking really affects triglyceride levels as well. One of the ways that we can help to lower triglycerides is actually taking fish oil. So fish oil isn't for everyone though. So if you're on blood thinners, it would not be recommended. So talk to your doctor about this. But taking some fish oil can actually help to lower triglycerides if they're really high. So that's the lipid panel. Then on the other side, we have blood pressure. So blood pressure, this measures the force of blood against our artery walls. So the ideal is less than 130 over 80. So systolic, that first number is the pressure in the arteries when the heart beats. And diastolic is when the heart rests and the blood's coming back, right? So that's the lower number. So usually blood pressure is diagnosed when two or more readings are 140 over 90 or above over a 2 to 4 week period. Now, there's something called white coat syndrome, which is that when, we're stressed, we're upset, we're at the doctor's office, it's a very kind of stressful situation sometimes. Due to that stress, our blood pressure can go higher. So if that's you, if you find yourself like, wow, every time I go to the doctor, my blood pressure is high, maybe it might be a good idea to get a blood pressure monitor at home and you can check, right? Make sure when you're checking, you are reading the instructions and doing what it says. Make sure the cuff is firmly fit on your hand. You kind of have your hand like kind of heart length, heart width over there. Have your legs uncrossed, kind of be in a relaxed state. Don't just have your chai or your coffee and then take your blood pressure. That's going to increase it. So it's helpful to kind of monitor at home too. And even for those that do have high blood pressure, just to kind of see what's going on. Now, what in the world is cholesterol in the first place? So, what's really amazing is it's actually something we need. I never want to see anyone's lab values and it's like zero. That's scary, right? We want to have some cholesterol. And that's why our body actually makes it. So, our liver is making cholesterol. And some of us have very efficient livers. Some of our livers take a little bit of raw material and they pump out a lot of cholesterol. And that could be very genetic. And unfortunately, for us South Asians, we do have that tendency. We do see high amounts of heart disease within our South Asian populations, unfortunately. And a lot of that is due to genetics. So that doesn't mean, oh, we give up, oh, it's in my genes. But we have to just try a little bit harder. So this is a waxy fat-like substance. It's made by the liver, and our liver makes it because it's a part of our cell walls. It's part of digestion. It's a part of bile, which breaks down fats. It's a part of hormone production. So we need it for estrogen, testosterone, vitamin D is also important. And it's important for our immunity too. So the things that affect our cholesterol production, as I was mentioning, is genetics, right? Some of us just, our livers are so efficient, they just make cholesterol so easy. Another big thing that we can actually do something about is our diet. So this is a big factor. We'll talk about that. And then, of course, other lifestyle factors also come into. So if we're smokers, if we have a lot of stress really affects our heart health. If we're just not getting enough activity, we're sedentary, and then not getting appropriate sleep. So all of these things come together for overall health and well-being. And we see that with heart health as well. So let's talk about the dietary factors. So remember, our liver is making cholesterol and it doesn't just make it out of nothing. It's not like, okay, I'm just going to create cholesterol out of nothing. There is actually some raw material that it uses to make our human cholesterol. So what happens is that just keep in mind that if we eat too much of these raw materials that and our liver is already really good at making a lot of cholesterol, then it's going to pump out a lot more. So you want to kind of regulate how much we're consuming of these raw materials. And the raw material that our body uses is fat. So when we consume a lot of fat, and in particular saturated fat, so saturated fat comes from animal products, but it also comes from tropical oils like coconut oil and palm oil. And there's a lot of people like, oh, I heard that I should be eating coconut oil, I should be eating beef tallow, I should be using ghee, and we'll talk about that. But at the end of the day, all of those things are very high in saturated fat. And that can really contribute to that production of cholesterol. And then also there's something called trans fat. These are man-made fats. Luckily, this has been banned, so we don't really see it that much. But back in the day, actually not even that long ago, there was something called trans fat that was partially hydrogenated oils. They took okay oils like vegetable oil, corn oil, and they ran it through a hydrogen bath to make it more solid so that it could stay on the shelf for longer. But actually, research show that's actually very bad. It increased our bad cholesterol, it decreased our good cholesterol. So luckily, I think the last couple of years it's been banned. But if you ever read a label and you do see partially hydrogenated oil, that indicates there's trans fat and you would want to avoid that.
Mm, hydrogenated.
So one thing also, because a lot of times when people have high cholesterol, they
But
start
he
looking
gets
at the
us
label.
hand out. Okay, where is it?
I'm just gonna ask if we can just mute, if that's okay. Sorry. I'll save. We'll definitely have time at the end for questions. So if you have any questions, just write them down, and inshallah, I'll get to them. Usually when we find out that we have high cholesterol, a lot of times if people start looking at, they start looking at the label and they're like, oh, well, there's cholesterol here. I can't have it. So let me kind of explain that. So dietary cholesterol, the cholesterol that we see on the label, that is coming from other animals. So if it has a mom or a dad, it's making its own cholesterol. Okay, so if I'm eating beef, that cow has its own cow cholesterol, right? Because they need cholesterol too. If I'm eating chicken, it has its own cholesterol. I'm eating even little shrimp. Even little shrimp have livers that are making their cholesterol. But the thing is, as our body is amazing, our body is not relying on us to eat those things to make human cholesterol. Like it doesn't make sense, right? Like why would my body, my human body, wait for me to eat chicken and then convert chicken cholesterol to human cholesterol, right? It doesn't make sense. So our body is very efficient. It's not doing that, right? So we don't need to eat other cholesterol to make our own cholesterol. When we're eating fat, we're making cholesterol. Now, when we're eating animal products, if I'm eating chicken, I'm eating, beef, I'm eating shrimp, fish, all of those things, that's called dietary cholesterol. And dietary cholesterol adds to my overall pot of cholesterol. But what research has shown recently, it doesn't make that big of an effect. All right. So it doesn't make that big of effect. It's just kind of adding to it, but it's not the basis of our cholesterol production. So that's going to be coming mostly from saturated fat. So that's what we have to watch. Where do we get saturated fat? From animal products. So animal products have that saturated fat and they're making their own cholesterol, right? And the animal products that have the highest amount of saturated fat is red meat. And red meat isn't just beef, but it's also lamb as well. So if we're eating lots of red meat, we're getting a lot of saturated fat from that. And it does have a lot of its own dietary cholesterol. If we're eating high fat dairy, that's why we usually do recommend, having like 1% milk if you're having milk, because it's the saturated fat that we're decreasing. All the other nutrients are the same, only the saturated fat is less. Butter and cheeses, all of those are also high in saturated fat. And I'm not saying don't eat these things, but we're supposed to consume less. 10% of our calories should only be coming from saturated fat, so a very small amount. But going back to dietary cholesterol, one of the big things that people were really concerned about was eggs, right? Especially egg yolk. Egg yolk does have a lot of dietary cholesterol, but the current research is showing it doesn't make that much of an effect on our overall cholesterol. Does that mean I can eat as much egg yolks as I want? No. But we don't have to avoid it like we used to previously. Even if you have a couple of egg yolks, per week, you're fine. If you're having egg whites, that's not an issue. Liver does have a lot of cholesterol because it's making cholesterol. So that might be something that we only have like once in a while. Shrimp does have a lot of dietary cholesterol, but again, that's if you eat a lot. The amounts that we eat usually should be fine. So this is not as much of a concern as having the saturated fat, again, from those animal products. And also coconut and palm oil do also have saturated fat. So if we eat, and I've seen this in my patients, when they all of a sudden, they're starting to eat lots of coconut oil, they're eating lots of butter, they're eating lots of, ghee, we do tend to see an increase, a bump in the cholesterol. So just something to kind of think about. So what can we do to help us to kind of change our lifestyle so that we can really bring down our cholesterol levels and just have more of a heart healthy profile? And some of the best things we can do is eat more plant-based foods, more vegetables, more fruits, beans and lentil. Beans and lentils actually are a really good source of protein. So eating more of that. And if we look at our prophetic lifestyle, our prophet, peace be upon him, he didn't eat that much meat. There wasn't that much meat available anyways, but he didn't eat that much anyways. And we keep seeing this in the research that people that have more of a plant slant, they do tend to have better arterial health, better cardiovascular health. So having more of a plant slant. So I'm not saying you don't have to, to give up meat completely. You can still have that, but just really toning it down. Also important is decreasing the amount of salt that we're consuming because that can affect our blood pressure. Just moving more, right? Being more active, managing our stress, and if we're smoking, quit tobacco. So there's different types of fats because not all fat is bad, right? And we do need all the different types of fats, but in moderate amounts. So some of the best types of fats that we can incorporate. So this is what you can do. You can take a look at, okay, what do I normally eat? Can I switch some of those fats that are not that great for me? Can I switch them to some more healthier fats? So maybe you love having lots of butter. And again, I'm not saying don't eat butter, but maybe don't have lots of it, right? Maybe a little bit here and there. But maybe instead of butter on my toast, maybe I can mash some avocado, right? Because avocado is one of the monounsaturated fats. And monounsaturated fats could help reduce the risk of heart disease because what they could do is they could potentially help raise our good cholesterol. So we see the monounsaturated fats, higher profiles in avocado and avocado oil, olives, olive oil, almonds, and peanuts are some of the high sources of monounsaturated fat. So again, you're switching, right? So instead of butter on my toast, maybe I can put peanut butter, right? Maybe instead of using ghee as I'm cooking, maybe I can use some avocado oil, right? So making those switches to some better types of fats. Then we have the polyunsaturated fats. So these are broken down into two different type of essential fats. There's the omega-3s, and omega-3s are really amazing because they can actually help decrease inflammation. I know many of us are dealing with inflammation. So this is an essential fatty acid that can actually help decrease inflammation. It can help lower triglycerides. So if your triglycerides are high, switch over to more of these omega-3s. These can also help to raise our good cholesterol. And there's some research looking at could it potentially help brain health. And we actually tell pregnant women to make sure that they're getting omega-3s because it helps the formation of the baby's brain. So some sources of omega-3s that we can incorporate are fatty fish. So all fish have some sort of omega-3, but there's certain fish that are very high in the omega-3 categories. So those would be things like salmon, tuna, trout, mackerel, herring, sardines, are some of the high omega-3 fish. So kind of incorporating them if you can, maybe twice a week, maybe, you have a little bit of fish, just about the size of the palm of your hand. It doesn't have to be a lot. If you don't like fish, that's fine. That you can get your omega-3s from walnuts, from flax seeds, and make sure the flax seeds are ground up. So you ground up flax seeds, and these are really good. And the chia seeds, this is really good for Ramadan, like incorporating them into your suhoor because they can also be very filling too. So maybe you add your walnuts, maybe you add your flaxseed, your chia seeds into your morning oatmeal, right? This is a good way of getting those omega-3s. Omega 6s, these are also an essential fatty acid. These can help to maintain our health, our cell structures and different procedures. But if we have too much, they can potentially increase inflammation. So some sources of omega-3s are like nuts and seeds and seed oils. I don't want to get into seed oils too much. There's actually a lot of misinformation about the seed oils. So seed oils would be like canola oil, soybean oil, things like that. What we see in the research, they've done countless studies on this, is that when people choose seed oils over the saturated fats, it does help to lower cholesterol. So what does that mean? So instead of having all that butter, if someone did switch over, to having canola oil or soybean oil, things like that, it does lower cholesterol more than if they were just having that butter and ghee. But the more ideal fat to cook with would be, again, the olive oil, the avocado oil. So that's a whole separate subject. But I don't want us to be scared of the seed oils as much as maybe we were, because unfortunately, there's a lot of misinformation regarding those. So how should we be eating? How do we incorporate this? So there's different plans that actually different diets, and by diet I don't mean short term, but a way of eating. And in the research, we see that the Mediterranean and DASH plan. So DASH stands for Dietary Approaches to Stop Hypertension. So this is basically diets. It doesn't mean you're eating like falafel and hummus. I mean, if you want to, that's fine. But Mediterranean basically is a type of a diet. And these diets are actually very high in vegetables and fruits and grains and legumes, which are beans and lentils. And therefore, they're very high in fiber. Also, in the Mediterranean region, they find that people are not eating lots of animal products. And if they are eating animal products, it's very good quality. Right. Unfortunately, our food supply in the US, it's very overly processed. Right. So unfortunately, in different parts of the world, just due to how their food is raised and produced, is way better than ours, unfortunately. So that's a whole separate topic in and of itself. So on our end, as much as possible, so we can just try to produce, or sorry, try to eat foods that are not so ultra processed. So when you're buying foods, just look at the ingredients. If there's a lot of ingredients and you don't understand those ingredients, maybe we can get something else, right? Also, in the Mediterranean Dash Plan, they don't eat a lot of saturated fat. They eat lots of olive oil in those countries, actually. So a lot of olive oil, but also their overall lifestyle. They don't have as much stress. They do a lot of walking. And the Mediterranean region is like southern Spain, Italy, northern Africa, Greece, that region. And that's where research shows that again, these people are eating a lot more fat, but their lifestyle actually we see less cardiovascular incidents there, just because of again overall what their how their lifestyle is. So what can we do? So I know in the wellness challenge that we had like our healthy plate that we're aiming for. So we just kind of aiming for that. And even for Ramadan, as much as possible, I know it's very difficult sometimes in Ramadan just to eat properly. I know we have good intentions, but maybe we're not feeling as hungry or, different things are going on. So as much as possible, try to make sure you're getting in some protein, right? Some heart healthy protein, get those beans, get those lentils. Soy is fine as well. Maybe you have some tofu, edamame, eggs, cottage cheese. Maybe you're having the different meats. Maybe you don't have red meat as often. Maybe you have red meat maybe once a week or something like that. But having 1/4 of our plate, about that much, about this much, about the palm of our hand of some sort of protein, that would be ideal. Then we have our vegetables and fruit. So load up whatever veggies you like. You can cook them, you can have it raw. And then those starchy vegetables, starchy carbohydrates, those would be things like maybe we're having brown rice, maybe we're having quinoa, maybe we're making our homemade bread, maybe we're having whole wheat bread, corn tortilla, all these different types of grain products, right? And also the starchy carbohydrates are where we would put the potatoes and the peas and the corn. Because those things, the peas, corn, potatoes, actually, they're vegetables, but they kind of are starchy vegetables, so they get moved into 1/4 of our plate. So here is some more examples that we can see. And this is a 9-inch plate. So this isn't a huge plate. This is a 9-inch plate. So just some things to do, right? And in Ramadan, I especially recommend for all of us to kind of make sure we're eating our protein first. Our protein is a building block of our body, right? So we want, and especially as we get older, we're just not getting enough appropriate protein. So make sure you start with that, right? Then get your vegetables, and then you can go around and have those different fiber-rich grains. So here's an example, right, of a plate. I know sometimes it's hard to get half a plate of vegetables, so you can get some fruit in there. Maybe we can have our some brown rice here, or whatever grain you like, whatever, foods that you like, whatever's part of your culture. It's okay to have, but just kind of think of this plate. And then we're getting our salmon there. You can do your your other fish. You can do your chicken. You can do, again, maybe you have some nice beans. You have those lentils, right? So maybe you have some cottage cheese for suhoor time. Maybe you have some eggs, right? So overall, just trying to just be cognizant of kind of like, did I get my protein? Do I have some vegetables? Do I have some grains, some carbohydrates? Because we need that for energy, and some fruit. Now, also really important for heart health because of blood pressure is sodium. Now, sodium is found in most foods. Everything has sodium in it. And sodium is actually a preservative. So back in the day, before, fridges were so common, how did our ancestors, preserve their foods? They would salt them and cure them, right? So sodium, again, is found in most foods just naturally because we do need it. It's an electrolyte. It's very important for heart function. But the problem is when we have too much. And unfortunately, because of our food supply, we see a lot of sodium in processed foods and restaurant foods. Even our halal restaurants will have a lot of sodium. So what we're trying to do for the general population, for all of us, is try to limit our sodium to no more than 2,400 milligrams per day. So just to kind of give you an idea of what that looks like, 1 teaspoon of salt has about 2,000 milligrams of sodium. So I know it feels like, wow, that's not a lot. But the problem, again, isn't when we're cooking. The problem is when we're eating out. So how can we eat less sodium? Try to eat more home cooked meals. Try to reduce the amount of salt that you are using and use herbs and spices. I mean, luckily we have so many amazing herbs and spices in our traditional foods. Use those. You can use flavored vinegars. Try to just, again, reduce the amount and try not to add salt to food when you are at the table. And even when you're cooking, if you can kind of reduce less, that would be advisable. And then our body does adjust, right? Our taste buds do adjust, but it does take some time for that. Also really important that we're finding an association with is sugar and heart health. So when we eat too much added sugar, so added sugars, again, are sugars that weren't there in the first place. They added them in. So if I'm having my desserts, if I'm having, lots of, sugary, yogurt even, things where we have added sugars added to the product, that has been linked to heart disease and a higher risk of dying from heart disease. And the thing is that sugar may increase those triglycerides. So I mentioned that earlier. Triglyceride is the fat in our blood. So those of you who have high triglycerides, really take a look at how much sugar you are consuming. Also, what sugar could do is it could affect the type of bad cholesterol, the LDL cholesterol that we have. It can create more small, dense LDL, and that is more of a problem than if we have loose, fluffy LDL. So sugar unfortunately affects that. Sugar can increase and drive inflammation, and it could potentially affect our blood pressure as well. So some of the things that we can also do, so that's food related, but also important is physical activity, right? So, getting some sort of movement in. We want to aim for ideally about 150 minutes each week. So that's about, if you do like 25 minutes per day, you can do chair exercises, maybe you're going for a walk. If you can do, maybe you have pool access, you can do some water aerobics, whatever it is that you can do. And we all can do something. So if your lower body is hurting, can you work your upper body out? If your upper body is hurting, can you work your lower body out? Right? So whatever we're able to do, whatever pace that we can do is really, really beneficial. And just trying to get more steps in when we can. So what we find is that physical activity can actually improve our lipid levels. So we do see it can help lower the bad cholesterol and help boost the good cholesterol. It can help increase our energy. It can help reduce stress. There's a very strong association between mental health and physical activity. Um, I wrote this again, boost energy levels. It's so important. I wrote it twice. It can also maintain healthy bones, muscles, and joints. It can build muscle and help maintain weight. As we get older, we do lose muscle mass, and that affects how quickly our body is burning calories. And regardless of weight or not, we want to make sure we have appropriate muscle because that helps support our skeletal structure and that can help us with being independent, right? I know all of us want to be as independent, doing our own things as long as we can. And that really does lean upon making sure that we have appropriate amount of muscle mass. So that's important. And it helps us to sleep. So again, just 25 minutes per day. It doesn't have to be all at once. You can kind of, break it up throughout the day. Maybe I do a 10-minute walk. Maybe I do some 10-minute stretches and chair exercises. That's just 20 minutes right there. There's tons and tons of videos on YouTube that you can also do. So there's some really good ways for us to get in activity. And also stress is a big factor, and that's like a whole separate subject. I don't want to, I can't, I just don't have time to get into those details. But we have different types of um, effects of stress in our body, right? So when we're stressed, it activates something called the sympathetic nervous system. And in the sympathetic nervous system, our body goes into fight or flight or freeze. Like something's wrong. I have to save myself. I have to get out of here. So what ends up happening is our pupils dilate, our airways dilate, our heart rate increases, right? And our body is not digesting properly because our body's like, okay, I have to run. I'll digest a little bit better later. Our liver is releasing glucose and fats into the bloodstream so we can run, right? There's a lot of things going on. And think about your state when you're in a state of stress, right? Let's suppose something happened, you're like, right? It's a different feeling, right? And then we relax and then we're over it. But imagine being in a high state of stress all the time. And we really have to kind of think about that, because it has a very prominent effect on our body and it really affects our heart health, right? How many of us have heard about people who are in a really stressed state, and then you hear about them later having a heart attack or a stroke. And I've seen it even with people that don't have high cholesterol. They don't have high cholesterol, but because of the stress, that could potentially trigger inflammation, and inflammation is a huge issue with heart health. And we are moving in that direction where there are going to be tests that we can see how much inflammation we have going on. And that is a more adequate predictor of heart disease and stroke risk than some of these other tests that we're using. So, really ask yourself, is this worth it for me to get so riled up, right? Is this life-threatening or is this a challenge? Because if we think it's a challenge, I got it, I can do it, it's not a big deal, and we kind of get more into a relaxed state, it activates the parasympathetic nervous system, and everything that happens in the sympathetic nervous system, this is the opposite, right? So our stomach is digesting better, our heart rate slows, right? We're just more in a calmer state. So really think about this, everyone, because I'm going to be honest, I think in our society, especially nowadays with everything going on in the world, we're very stressed, right? And previously we would be stressed and we'd relax, but now we have such chronic stress that this can be a big issue with inflammation. So not to stress you out, but just letting you know that we need to kind of really think about stress management. And this moves me into Ramadan, which again, less than 48 hours, we'll be fasting, many of us. And if you can't, no worries, right? I know there's a lot of people with medical conditions that are not able to, so it's always the intention. And that's like a whole separate talk. I know next week, inshallah, I believe Sarah Rahman's going to be here talking about purification of the heart. So she'll be touching that. But I do want to mention that, as we move into the state, we think of our
चलाई तो
physical
नहीं करनी
we think about our physical heart, but there is also the spiritual heart. So in Ramadan is a good time for us to get good health practices in. So because we have 30 days that we are, changing, our lifestyle. So this is a good way for us to encourage and get into more healthy practices. physical practices, but also this is a great spiritual practice for us as well. So verily in the body is a piece of flesh, which if sound, the entire body is sound. And if corrupt, the entire body is corrupt, and truly it is the heart. So I know, again, I'm setting this up for Sarah next week. She'll be here talking about the spiritual health. So I just wanted to bring this in because, again, we worry about the physical heart, but we also want to be concerned about our spiritual heart as well. All right. So I know I am kind of running on a time, but I want to leave some time for questions. But really quickly, really, really quick, I do want to kind of give some ideas about how we can properly have good nutrition to help us to make it through Ramadan for those that are fasting. So you want to make sure that you are having a good suhoor, right? As much as possible. I know some people are like, it's really hard for me to eat. I just drink water and have my date and I go back to sleep. Fine, whatever works for you. But if you're able to eat, right, we want to make sure we're having a fiber-rich carbohydrate. So things like maybe you have some fresh fruit, maybe you have oats, maybe you can make some talbina, which is a sunnah food with barley. Maybe you have some whole grain, bread, toast, waffles, pancakes. Maybe you're making your own bread, and you want to combine it with some sort of protein and or a healthy fat. So we talked about healthy fats in today's session, avocados, nuts, and seeds. And the proteins would be like eggs, clotted cheese, maybe you have some Greek yogurt. So you always do want to do a combination. Don't just have oatmeal by itself, have maybe it with some eggs, maybe throw some nuts in there, maybe make it with some milk so there's some protein, but you always want to make sure there's a proper combination. The protein is going to help give us satiety. The fiber is also going to keep us full, and the carbohydrates are going to give us that energy. Here are some ideas of different support things. You can make them ahead of time. And if you like to eat whatever you had for dinner, that's fine, right? Maybe, you had, your chicken and rice for dinner, go ahead and have it for suhoor, whatever works. But as long as there's that balance, right? So maybe you have some egg scramble, egg with lots of veggies, but always combine it with some sort of maybe you have some toast, maybe you have some oatmeal with that. Things you can make ahead of time as well. So you're like, ready to go, could be really helpful. And also iftar, our iftar tradition, what's really amazing and so beautiful is that, our sunnah, the recommendation when we break our fast is to break it with a date. And what's really amazing about dates is they actually are very low on the glycemic index, meaning that they should not increase your blood sugars dramatically, even for those that have diabetes. If you have one date, two dates, you should be fine. But always make sure you're combining it with something else. Maybe you have some nuts with it. Maybe you have your other iftar foods that have some protein with it. So that combination is really helpful. And some cultures they eat, a light iftar. Maybe they have like their dates and water, then they go pray, then they come back and they have like their dinner. I know in our South Asian, Desi culture, we have large iftar, a large dinner. So do what works for you, but always make sure there's a balance, right? If you want to get those fried foods in, just try to limit it. Can you maybe air fry if you can? Maybe limit it to like special iftar parties. It's really up to you. But what we're mostly eating is what matters. And then also make sure we're well hydrated. This is another issue that I tend to see a lot of times in our community is we're just not getting enough hydration. So for women, the recommendation is about 9 cups of fluid a day. So it's 1 cup is like 8 ounces. Okay, it's not huge. It's about 8 ounce cup. So nine for women, about 13 for men. And fluid means not just water. It could be anything non-caffeinated. So maybe your milk, maybe you're having some herbal tea, right? So if it's non-caffeinated, that can count as well. Maybe you're drinking some soup, right? Some broth. That also counts. A lot of times I hear from people, do I need electrolytes? Do I need to, put liquid IV or anything into my drink? It really depends. It depends on how you're feeling. Usually a lot of them are very high in sugar, a lot of them are very high in sodium. So if you have a high, blood pressure, you have diabetes, maybe these might not be good for your, blood pressure or blood sugars. You can make some at home if you want. Maybe just have some coconut water. You can add a little bit of juice, very little bit, honey and maple syrup, salt. But I'm gonna be honest, if you hydrate properly, you should be okay, right? If you're eating properly and hydrating properly, you should be okay. So I just wrote an example here of ways we can hydrate properly. So maybe you're having 2 cups of water at iftar time. After Maghrib, maybe you're having another cup and a half. Maybe during Tarawih prayers, you're having like two cups. You're kind of sipping as you're in between rakats. Maybe after Tarawih, you come home, you have another, cup and a half. And as suhoor, maybe you drink, 2 glasses. So you're at 9 glasses there, right? So inshallah, it's just a matter of kind of pacing ourselves. But if you're really feeling drained and, I don't know, um, then maybe having, a little bit of electrolytes, could be helpful. Maybe just start off with some coconut water and see how you feel. Okay. So with that said, I think I have about 10 minutes for questions. Um, so I'm going to stop sharing so I can kind of see the screen properly. Um, and yeah, how everyone doing okay? I know there's a lot to talk about. Um, so if you want, like I did, again, I did a more thorough, very in-depth session about like Ramadan and proper eating. So if you're interested, I do have the recording. You can email me. I'll give you my email in the chat box. Or so I know. Wait, let me get it. So it's in the chat.
Salam alaikum. This is
Alaikum salam.
Yasmin.
How are
I
you?
was just going to ask you to give us because it was a lot of information.
Yeah,
I couldn't take pictures of everything,
and no
but
problem.
it was so excellent. You gave us ideas. I really appreciate it.
Sure,
You know, about it was I took a picture. So,
sure,
uh,
sure.
about the cholesterol,
Right,
you know, some people have hereditary, can't avoid do anything
exactly.
about it. How do you, I know we need to eat fish. The fish that you have mentioned, it's very hard to get here,
Yeah.
except for salmon, and I cannot eat salmon. No,
Sure. There's also tuna too. So you can get like tuna.
tuna.
You can
Oh,
have
tuna.
that.
Okay.
So tuna, yeah. So it's like salmon, tuna, trout also has some omega-3s. For those cultures,
Okay.
I'm always impressed when people can eat sardines. Sardines is not part of
Mhm.
I
many of our
love
cultures.
sardines
But if you
only
love
if it is
sardines, that's
fresh.
excellent.
Only if it
Um,
is fresh and you don't get it here. In London, you get it fresh,
so yeah,
you
so that's
know.
the thing. Other parts of the world, we get such, different types of
Yeah.
foods that
Yeah.
are. So yeah,
So
but
how do you control your cholesterol? I don't eat anything much, but so
So yeah, that's a good question. So if just genetically we have high cholesterol production, one of the things honestly to do is kind of switch more to have making sure you're getting more plants in, more vegetables in, right? Maybe decreasing
yeah.
the amount of meats that you're having, maybe having smaller amounts of meat, you know.
Yeah, I
Again,
follow all
fish,
that direction.
yeah,
Small amount,
exactly.
more vegetables
Exactly.
and fruits and
Working
dals.
on our exercise, our stress. But for some
Yeah.
people, honestly, we're doing all that, but we still see high amounts of cholesterol, then that's where, you talk to your doctor maybe about, having some sort of cholesterol medication.
Okay.
But always
All
making
right.
sure that we're doing what we can on the nutrition front and just lifestyle front as well. Um, so
Okay.
yeah, with the fish again, it can just be twice a week. And for those that don't like fish, because fish is not like the main driver to help reduce cholesterol, what actually really helps is again being more plant-based. And there's some really good documentaries that are out there that people can literally reverse their atherosclerosis by being more plant-based. For some people, again, I don't really recommend it because it's not for everybody, but even we've seen in the research when people remove animal products, we literally can see a reversal of heart disease.
Removing chicken. The only meat I eat is chicken and fish and
Yeah,
eggs.
yeah,
So removal of all of that?
yeah. That's what we see in the research. Again, it's I'm not gonna recommend it for everyone because it's
No, no,
hard.
no. Yeah, yeah.
But we do see that. But just again, try maybe once a day I eat meat. Maybe the other meal I'm having my beans, I'm having my lentils,
Yeah,
maybe I'm
that's
having
what
my
I do.
soy. Perfect. Yeah. So, but
Yeah.
again, that genetic part can make it tough. I know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I have
Yeah.
a question.
Sure.
Thank
How are
you.
you? Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, this is regarding the fish again.
Sure.
What is the tuna which comes in small tins? The tuna, and
Yeah.
I've heard that it has contains more iodine in it or something, and that is why
More mercury rat. So the
mercury. Sorry.
tuna. Yeah, so the tuna, so this is the thing with fish. This is the problem that we're having with so many different foods is that we don't want to eat too much of everything. So I don't want us to be like, okay, tuna is good. Every day I want to have tuna sandwich because there is a lot of mercury. So if you get like the tins and make sure it's in water, if you have like 1 can of tuna a week, that's sufficient, right? So maybe you have salmon, like this much salmon once a week. Maybe once a week I have my tuna, you're good, right? So, and then even having different types of fish, maybe one week, I have what's it called? Red snapper, maybe I have halibut, but we do see the omega-3s are higher in again the salmon, tuna, trout, sardines, things like that. And again, if that's difficult, then that's fine because fish is in and of itself is not going to lower our cholesterol per se, but it's giving us omega-3s. And omega-3s is what helps with inflammation as well. And we can get that from walnuts and chia seeds and flax seeds. And for those that can, even taking a little bit of fish oil, about 1,000, 2,000 milligrams, could also be helpful. But talk to your doctor first. Don't just take fish oil on your own, especially if you're on blood thinners. We would not recommend that, but that could be helpful.
Thank
And
you.
we always want to have variety, everyone. Don't just like, okay, every day I'm gonna eat the same exact thing because then we are getting the same contaminants, right? So we want to kind of mix it up as much as possible. Variety is the name of the game.
Mhm. No, this is another stress, when you're looking at your plate. Do I have carbs? Do I have vegetables?
Yeah.
That is another stress
It is a stress, unfortunately. But like I said, let's just relax, right? This is a challenge. I can
Yes.
do this, right? I'm doing the best that I can. Do I have my
Just don't
meat? Do I
have to
have my
overdo.
beans?
Mm.
But no, I understand. It's very important to us. I know. So we're just trying our best, right? So baby steps, everyone, just baby steps, if you do things too dramatic, it's hard for us to sustain long term. So just baby steps. And this is a great time of year to start these baby steps, right? We have 30 days that, we have some routine. So inshallah, that routine will continue on the rest of the year.
Thank you so much. This was an excellent, excellent
Yeah,
program, and
thank
your
you, everyone.
business
I
was
appreciate all
so
of
good.
you coming.
Does
Loved it.
And we
anyone
will
have
have the
any other
recording
questions
as well
about
for
salt?
this.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Any
We have the
questions about
recording.
salt?
yeah. So someone asking
Salt,
me?
yeah, I don't know if anybody has any questions, but I have a question about salt.
Sure, sure.
They say Himalayan salt is good, instead of the other regular salt. But and how I know you said you can use lemon juice and spices to, alleviate the salt intake.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so, if you use Himalayan pink salt, is that better than the regular iodized salt? Because I know when I did not take iodine in my salt, my blood pressure just dropped dramatically.
Sure, sure.
So that's why I want to be careful.
Right, right. So we
What do
do
you recommend?
definitely need some iodine, right? Because an
Yeah,
iodized salt is one of the main sources that we're getting the iodine. Iodine we also get from seafood as well, but the Himalayan salt doesn't have the iodine. That's the
yeah,
one issue, but it does have a lot of different minerals as well in it. So you can kind of maybe do like a mix, right?
yeah.
Maybe I
That's
do
what I
sometimes
do.
I do a little Himalaya salt, maybe I do a little bit of my regular salt, but just overall just kind of, decrease it gradually. There's no good salt, like kosher salt or sea salt because they're all sodium, right? Just the
Yeah.
granules are a different size, but it's still sodium in there.
You. Thank
So
you.
another
Um,
question
I'm
regarding
so
salt.
sorry.
Oh,
I know we,
continue,
we have a
Yasmin.
hard stop at 12.
I can do
So
I can do a couple of minutes is the way
okay,
I'll
okay,
Okay,
already
this
log
last
in.
question regarding
okay.
salt. When we are cooking a dish, so we put maybe 1.5 teaspoons of salt in that. And
Sure.
out of that, how much does a person consume? We don't take so much, in a
Exactly.
spoonful or 2 spoons of the gravy or whatever has been cooked. So
Exactly.
per person, it will not be so much per serving rather.
Exactly. That's the thing. That's why I don't get too concerned when people are cooking at home, because we again maybe we're cooking multiple quantities, we're eating it, for a variety of days. But the more the problems when we go out to eat, right? When we go out to eat,
Yes.
when we're using processed foods, let's suppose we're using some bouillon cubes that has a lot of sodium. So on our end, if we can just use a little bit of less, so we can offset that what sodium we're getting in
Mhm.
from different foods. So I know, Michelle, we're going to have the recording for this up. And then if you want more of a Ramadan centric recording that I did for a different organization, just email me and I can send that to you. I went into a lot of detail. It's a lot of detail about protein and just different ideas, meal planning.
So the
So
email, please.
so it's
It's in the chat.
RU. This is my little this is Rue Nutrition, RUH Nutrition at g
RUH
at gmail.com.
nutrition.
Yeah, it's my little side practice.
Oh,
Rue Nutrition, RUH.
Do you also counsel privately?
Yeah, so I work for Kaiser, but I am starting to take private patients.
Oh, you work for Kaiser.
I work for Kaiser, yeah.
Oh,
So that's
good.
I'm gonna log off and log into my work.
Okay, great. Thank you. My daughter has
So,
Kaiser, so great.
so
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
All right,
if you
take
are, if you
care.
one more question.
Sure, sure.
If you are, we are Kaiser patient, we can request to have if we need the diet counseling,
Sure. Yes.
can we
If you have
request
like
you?
a medical condition, if you have like an actual medical condition, not just weight loss. Weight loss, we
Not
have a whole
weight loss,
program.
but the
But if it's like a medical,
diabetes and blood
exactly.
pressure.
Yes. And then I'm at Fontana though. So that would be the service area then. All right,
Okay.
everyone. You all take care. Inshallah, have a great
Thank
Ramadan,
you
and
so much.
inshallah, we'll see
Happy
each other
Ramadan to you.
soon. Take care.
Everybody.
Thank you so
Assalamu alaikum.
much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Take care, everybody. And a reminder, we don't have our Tuesday sessions tomorrow at Fullerton Base, okay?
Mhm.
All right.
And
And
even Wednesdays are not there.
Wednesdays, we're only having Tai Chi in the
Tai
morning.
Chi.
Oh, that's
Tai
good.
Chi.
That's not
I
good.
know in
Hmm?
preparation for Ramadan, we just want to
Tai
slow
Chi
it.
is not that not lot of physical activity, so we can do that, and
Mhm.
it can count in our daily activities.
Olive Community Services is a 501c3 nonprofit organization based in Southern California that provides culturally appropriate services to seniors, their family, and the community. Through its physical and virtual interactive programs, Olive engages participants in a variety of ways that promotes health and well-being. To learn more about Olive Community Services, to get involved, or to make a donation, please visit www.olivecs.org or email info@olivecs.org. Be a change maker, and together, let's live, learn, and thrive.